Hello, so what we are going to be doing today is a chickpea and spinach curry. We do this with year 8. So I'm going to be demonstrating how to deal with your ginger, the onion and your garlic. I'm then going to be using my saucepan. What I'm not going to demonstrate today is how to cook the rice. Everybody does this slightly differently at home. Some people have rice cookers, but what it tends to be is that whatever rice that you're using, it's 75 grams per person. This is for an adult. And then if you cover the rice with about a knuckle extra of water, so as you're filling the water up, it should roughly be a knuckles width of water left on the top, and you'll boil that for 10 minutes or so, and then you'll be able to eat the rice with your curry that we're going to be making today. So just my garlic. So what I'm going to be doing today is demonstrating how to deal with your onion, the ginger and the garlic, demonstrating how to open your tins of tomato as well, because that seems to be a bit of a tricky issue for some people. So first question for you: when we're using knives, what safety points do we need to consider when we're using them? So when we're using knives, what safety points do we need to consider? So all I've done so far is just taken the top off. Now the bottom has the root part in your onion. So just take the rest of that off. And I'm actually going to take off the next layer as well, because there's a bit of sort of papery bit there. If it behaves, there we go. So you're just wanting to get rid of the skin of your onion. And if you have a bowl next to you to get rid of your waste, that makes it much easier and saves you having to go backwards and forwards. Okay, making sure that you keep your area nice and clean at all points. So then what I'm going to do is, if you remember, we've got our bridge hold and our claw grip. So those are the two key holds that you need to remember when you're cutting anything. And even if you're watching MasterChef or any of those sorts of cooking shows, you'll see that chefs are still using the claw grip and the bridge hold. So I'm going to start with the bridge hold. Okay, so keeping your 4 fingers together and your thumb slightly away so you create that bridge. And all I'm going to do is cut through the root all the way through. Best way of doing that is going straight down into the board and then pulling the handle down. What I'm then going to do is just cut diagonally some nice long strips, and we're just going to dice our onion into small pieces. Now the recipe does ask for 1 onion. If you've got quite large onions, maybe you only want to do half. So now that I've got all of those long lines already cut into my onion, what I'm then going to do is turn it round and then cut in a horizontal way. Now the main reason that we keep the root on is just so that it holds it together and it makes it easier at this point to chop. So I'm going to use my claw grip and slowly cut through my onions until I get all roughly the same size. And because my chopping board's quite small, I'm just going to put my onion into my saucepan now before before I do the next bit. So then I just repeat with the second half. Making sure that you just clean as you go. So what I'm going to do now is prepare my garlic and my ginger. So the recipe asks for 2 cloves of garlic and about 2 centimetres of ginger. Remember that it's not going to be a complete shape of cube, so just roughly 2 centimetres, that will do. With your garlic, you can grate it, you could chop it, or you could just use a garlic crusher as well. So like I've done with the onion, I just need to take the skin off. So I'm just using the palm of my hand to push down so that I can then get the skin off my garlic. Making sure that you're being really careful with that knife, with the sharp edge. So I'm doing mine in my garlic crusher. So I'm just going to do that into the board because I'm going to cook the onion just for a few minutes to start to soften before I add my garlic. With the ginger, you need to take the skin off, but actually what we're going to be doing, you could peel that off, but that means then you take off too much of the flesh on the inside. So I'm going to use a teaspoon just to scrape. You could do this with a butter knife as well, just to scrape the skin off. What I'm then going to do, now that I've taken most of the skin off, let's find another bit, there we go, is I'm going to grate it. Now you could do this in just using a knife if you don't have a grater, but all I'm going to do is whilst you're grating as well, you might catch any of the other skin that you've not managed to get off. So you can see on the top there I've managed to catch some of the other skin. If you're finding it quite difficult to hold on to, as I am, just what you can do, like we've done with making carrot cakes in the past, if you've seen that, is just use a fork to help you, and that should then make it slightly easier to grate. And there you have it, you've got your grated ginger. Just make sure that you scrape the inside of your grater so that you get all of that lovely flavour. And at this point I'm just going to turn my hob on and start frying my onions. I'm just adding a tablespoon of oil. So I've just put my onions onto a medium-high heat. So it's on about 6. But these heat up much quicker. Those that have now moved to Stamford Raffles, you'll see that the induction hobs are what I'm using at the moment, and that's what we've got at school. So these heat up very, very quickly. Now at this point what we want to be doing is just sweating our onions. We're not actually frying them. We don't want to turn them a brown colour. So we're just sweating them. We're cooking them quite slowly. So we're going to be using a couple of methods of cooking today. So what I would like you to do whilst everything is going to be simmering later on is, can you find out what the methods of cooking are? So what are the methods of cooking? So for example, simmering is a method of cooking. So what other methods of cooking are there? And make sure that you write a description as to what they are and what their function is. So what we're looking for to know when our onions are done are that they have turned a translucent colour. So they've gone slightly see-through. So they're not completely see-through, but they are slightly clearer to look through. So translucent. So leave those for another 30 seconds and then I'm going to add my ginger and my garlic. Now in the recipe it will state that you will need to cook these for 2 to 3 minutes, but depending on how you have dealt with these, so if you have grated them they may only take 30 seconds. If you have chopped them they may take slightly longer, so just be aware of that. So that's my 2 cloves of garlic going in and my 2 centimetres of grated ginger. And that's where some really lovely smells will begin to appear as well. So just mix that through. So starting to do that and just clear your area. Whilst I'm just waiting for that to cook, I'm just going to open my tin of chickpeas and my tin of tomatoes. So using, when it behaves, there we go. Get that ready. Be very, very careful of this the lid now, because this will be really, really sharp, so just be really careful at that point. Now you're going to use the whole tin of tomatoes, so don't throw any of the liquid away. The chickpeas, open those up as well. Now in the chickpeas you'll find that there is quite a lot of water in here. And what you're going to do is you're going to drain all of that liquid away. You don't need to use this. However, if you are in a household that cannot eat eggs, this is a fantastic, so chickpea water is a can't remember what it's called now. That's not particularly helpful. Either way, it's a good egg supplement that you can use. So if you're doing meringues and you need them to be egg free, you could use this water, which I'm still trying to remember what it's called. I'll find out soon. And you can use that water to help you make meringues. We have trialled it with cupcakes and things like that, but it doesn't work particularly well. So that's my chickpeas then drained, and that is now my garlic and my ginger cooked as well. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to turn that down a little bit already, and I'm going to be adding my 2 teaspoons of cumin and a teaspoon of turmeric. So I'm going to add that in now. And you'll notice that the turmeric, it will stain things, so be very careful around your clothes when you're using the turmeric. You may find as well that it will stain your wooden spoon. Don't worry, it's absolutely fine. So I'm just going to cook that out just a little bit before I add my tinned tomatoes. So whilst we're waiting for that to cook out, I've got another question for you. So why would you add a sauce to a dish? So why would you add a sauce to a dish? So now that that's been cooked out, I'm just going to add my tin of tomatoes. So it's a lovely red colour at the moment, but with our turmeric that will then change colour. And obviously with our onions there as well. So we're doing what we call a reduction sauce. So another question for you is, what does reduction of a sauce mean? So what does reduction of a sauce mean? And can you find out if there are other methods of thickening our sauce? So are there other methods of thickening a sauce? I'm going to let that cook for 5 minutes. I want it simmering, I don't want it boiling. So I'm going to bring it up to the boil first and then just lower the heat back down. So boiling, I'm going to see lots and lots of bubbles appearing, and then simmering, I'm going to see maybe a little bit of steam coming off, maybe a few bubbles here and there, but that will then start to reduce down. So you can see there that it's really starting to bubble now. There's some steam beginning to produce, and what I'm going to do now is just turn that heat down. So it's on 3 and it's just going to simmer for a couple of minutes. Okay, so that's been simmering for 2 to 3 minutes. What I'm going to do now is just add my chickpeas. So the base of this sauce you could actually use for meat curries as well. So rather than adding chickpeas at this point, you could have pre-cooked some chicken and put it in there. So have a play around with this as well. Now the spinach that I'm using, rather than fresh leaves, I am using frozen because they are easier to store and it doesn't go off as quickly. So I'm just going to pop those in now. If you were using fresh, you don't need to have them in as long, but you may have to do them in and as batches, because spinach is quite a it's quite large quantities, or it looks like a large quantities until it's cooked and it wilts down. So do make sure that with fresh ones you may have to do in batches, but they don't need as long. only once your spinach is cooked do you add then your masala, which is your final spice that you add in. So just letting that cook off, and then I am going to be adding my 1 teaspoon of masala. So there we have it, we have got my chickpea and spinach curry. One last question for you before I add my masala is, why is spinach so good for us? So why is spinach so good for us? So the last thing that I'm just going to do is just add my masala in. Okay, so I've got a good heaped teaspoon there. Pour that in and just give it a stir round. Now obviously with all the seasonings you can add more or reduce it. I wouldn't, in terms of the masala, I'd make sure that you're adding what it says in the recipe, but you could add more. I suppose the last final question for you is just, what is masala? So what is in masala? Enjoy!